Hello. Right, boss is in the room. Everybody sit up straight, look like you're working.
Go back to work. Go back to work. Oh, you can boss me. Yeah, but I'm not the boss man.
Oh yes, well there's that.
Hello, Chris and Ned. How are you?
What time is it?
Obnoxious.
Time to start.
Yes, it is time
It's,
to
we're in the
start.
Brobdingnagian 3 room, and it's 1 minute past starting time.
Yes, welcome to the extra session. I expect going to finish early given the length of time we have and the paucity of material that showed up for this one, but who knows how long I'm at 4M2 will take. We have the note well reminder of code of conduct based on discussions yesterday in the plenary. It's a good time to remind everybody that while you're quite welcome to attack ideas, don't attack people. We're all working together here.
You were quite nice in Kenya last time.
Oh yes,
Look at the new person and we were welcome.
it was lovely. And this is a very small and very effective little group that we have here. All right, this is the agenda. I put a couple of items on the end, one of which is milestones. This came up in the chairs group, the fact that our milestones are in the past and maybe we should review them and update them to be something slightly realistic and keep ourselves a little bit accountable about what we're working on and where we're going. Question of whether we want to revive 64-bit. And at the end of the current set of documents, we don't have any new work flowing in at the moment. Should we close the group down or hibernate the group for a while and see if new work comes along? So I thought that might be a good thing to discuss in the time that we have here. Any other agenda bashing? Barry's hitting agendas, not people.
Did you want to discuss what mistakes?
Sure.
Well, it's... yes.
We have a bunch of documents here. Shall we do that first?
Yeah, just very quickly.
Cool.
I think for the most part, I think this working group is very good and very productive, and we usually, fingers crossed, don't get discusses on documents. We do have, however, get some comments. So the document save date is held in point raised write-up needed, meaning that basically I'm waiting for editor to go through comments and say yes or no.
All right.
I think Stefan actually he replied, but he didn't post a new version. So
Yeah, Stefan was waiting for a response from Ned on something as well.
Stefan wants to speak.
All right, can you hit the red button, please? Yeah. Yes.
Okay, am I supposed to do something with this document? I didn't notice actually, because the reason I'm asking for net is not save date. It's the civ.
Yeah.
All right, so let's have a look at this.
So yeah, I'm basically with save date. I'm happy to approve the document anytime now, but I think you replied to various comments. Did you make any changes to your copy of the draft?
Not so far.
Okay.
And remind me which ones. I'll have a look. But
So do you know where to find ISG comments in data tracker?
that should be on the main page somewhere, right?
Well, on the main ISG review page, yes, you can see all the comments in one place. I mean, again, if there are comments, you don't have to just blindly follow them.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay to argue against them or whatever, but it's just good idea, and it's a polite thing to do to reply to all of the comments. I think you did, but
Then there was only one, right? It was about the extra example somewhere, I think.
I don't have the page on comments at them.
Yeah, okay, we'll discuss that later if necessary.
Looking through my notes on this, I've got an email I sent to Alexi saying, is there anything I need to do on this? And that it was waiting for a response from the author.
Click on the document. We have time. I mean,
Cool. Sure, thank you. All right, so this document here, and ASG write-ups, evaluation record, yep.
don't worry too much about the template. This will be fixed by RFC editor. I'm not too worried.
Knit. Should there be an example for the nil response case? Appears to be the only question.
So that's where I provided a bit of an example text, but in the end he didn't even want to have it included. He just wanted to know what it would look like. So based on that one, I don't expect any changes.
Fine, then I can approve it.
Cool.
Yes.
And there were questions regarding back. Wait for it to load. Civ FCC, and that says revised draft needed.
Yes. So on this one, there were two comments that I raised trying to implement it. One about use of optional tags. It looks like consensus from people who are interested that, yeah, we should ideally use a tag, but it's okay not to use it. Ned thought it was okay, and Tim Showalter thought that, well, we can relax the requirement to use tags to should, and yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I don't have any strong objections to that.
Okay. Does it still need a revised draft, or should we?
Don't remember. I'll double check. I thought I only posted 2 comments. I'm trying to remember whether I posted a separate AD review. Probably not.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I'll update this to move forward.
Cool. I can follow up with Ken when he wakes up in a few hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Stefan was asking about from that to double check IMAP examples, but I can do that, so that's fine.
All right. Shall we go back to the agenda? Was there anything? I think the only other document we have in progress here is, fetch preview we'll talk about later. I'm at 4 of 2 we'll talk about later, and Civ special use. I think we're happy with that's ready to go through to submit for publication.
Oh, sorry. I had a brain fart because all the comments I was talking about were about special use.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Civ FCC.
Civ FCC does require new revision. It sort of introduced, well, I think we talked about it earlier, that tagged arguments cannot have other arguments as parameters.
Yep.
So I don't think the document implies this anymore, but it has a BNF that sort of kind of implies this. So I would like to clarify that that's not the case. It's just that FCC can be used with other parameters.
Yep.
I think I suggested a specific change.
Cool. I will follow up with Ken on that. We're using this one in production already, so we know it works to some degree. But yeah, having the document be right will be good. All right, moving on. I'm at for Rev 2 slides. You're back. One of you is back.
Yes, my apologies for coughing so much into microphone. The book is catching up with me and my cold is getting worse.
Yeah.
Right. Next slide. I probably skip goals. That's just sort of to remind what, what we're trying to achieve. Changes. So we've added literal minus, so non-synchronizing literals are now supported in text. In various places where the text says there are 2 types of strings, it says either 3 types of strings or, if it doesn't matter which literal type it is. I ask people to double check the text and ABNF. Hopefully I'll quote all the cases. There are a few sections where the difference mattered, so, please double check. Then we had a great contribution by Chris Newman, both about support for EI messages and UTF-8 mailboxes, as well as allowing UTF-8 in quoted strings. That's probably the biggest change in the latest revision. And then there was a little extra thing for status size to return. We just published extension on this, didn't we, right?
Yeah.
So this is just folding it in.
Yeah, that's got an RFC number now. All right, next slide.
So the document has an appendix where it sort of has suggested directions and marks the stuff which is done. So it's slightly bigger than this section, but these are the main things remaining. I think body structure is, I found to be quite problematic part of the protocol. We'll probably need more examples, especially showing forwarded messages. Message RFC 822 is always a special case.
Yeah, this is Barry. I think examples will help. I also think explanatory text will help. I think it's not, the original text in IMAP was not very explanatory. Just said, here's what you do, blah, and that was it. And then it expected you to go to the ABNF and figure it out. So I think if we run through some more prose, it will help.
Sure. The other thing is, what I typically do is, there is a big example that shows moderately complicated message with body part numbering, which does help a little bit. But every time I have a bug, I go to this example, then I check what Cyrus is doing,
Right.
and that's not ideal. We really need to have enough text to be able to extract this information.
Yeah, and ideally the IMAP tester should have the example that's in the spec in there as well, so that it can test that example against all servers.
Right. And I also think that putting text into all of this stuff, just pointing out that you can't put extra blank spaces in and that kind of stuff will help, because people, even though the grammar, if you read the grammar carefully, it makes it clear that no blanks are allowed. People just assume that in between parentheses you could put blanks.
Yeah.
And then they have buggy implementation. So I think we need to put words in that make that very clear so that people don't trip over it.
Yeah. We've got Stefan.
Yeah, I was just looking at the unofficial IMAP protocol wiki, and it contains a few lists of best practices and also Mark Chrisman's 10 commandments of how to write an IMAP client. Maybe you can draw some inspiration from there for this clarification section.
Sure. The other thing sort of related to body structure is we probably need more examples of body part.mime, body part.header, because again, this is another thing that I always use my own server or Cyrus to test against to see what the behavior is. Because in some cases, for some body part types, they're equivalent, and for others, they produce entirely different results. So again, probably more clarification, more examples would be helpful.
Yeah, there's the IMAP test actually has a buggy test for binary dot parts because they're not. It's not the same as the non-binary version. That stuff's confusing in there.
Yeah, John Levine, this is just a question. I notice it requires that for character set support, you have to support ASCII and UTF-8, but you may support other character sets. I'm wondering, is there enough legacy interest in other character sets?
No. Well, no,
We can't kill them?
we can't kill them.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah, anyway, for those following at home, yes, my question was, could we make those the only two character sets and kill the other ones?
As an implementer, I would love to do this. For practical cases, no, you can't. Outlook and Thunderbird still generate a lot of, there are like 3 or 4 Cyrillic ones, for example, and they still can generate these. Well, exactly. I'm just one example.
So, okay, but then maybe I'm not sure what John is asking. So are you talking about in the content of the messages, or are you talking about in the protocol and whatever?
Oh, I'm talking about, I'm talking, yeah, in the protocol. I mean, clearly in MIME bodies, you can put whatever garbage you want.
Right.
Okay, but the question was like in the IMAP messages that go back and forth.
That's what I thought you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
So the answer to that is absolutely UTF-8 only.
Oh, well, that, because the draft currently says you may support other character sets.
Right.
If I remember correctly, it probably talks about search, and search is different. Search, you need to support whatever is in messages. Everything else sent is either ASCII or UTF-8. So that's we don't support any other character sets in human readable messages.
And we have TOS modified UTF-7, right? It's already out.
Yes, it's basically in the section saying if you want to support both IMAP for Rev1 and Rev2 in the same server, you might have to support it.
Okay.
Next slide. No?
There are three
Okay.
more topics. Hopefully this is not going to be controversial, but one thing I'm thinking about is IMAP for Rev1 never required UID fetch item to be returned in unsolicited fetches. Can we make this a requirement?
And yes, definitely +1 to that, because otherwise clients see the fetch response and they immediately do a fetch UID to get the UID on that message. And it's stupid to make them do that.
Yeah, if you enable query sync, you already get them. But otherwise.
Right, which is not fully included in this, but yes, this because query sync will return UIDs in vanished response, it would really be nice to have UIDs everywhere coming from the server, and the client has a choice of using UIDs or message numbers.
Yeah.
The other two remaining things, I think we agreed to add list extended without multiple list patterns, because nobody really does multiple list patterns. And related to this is we need to expose status and list, which is quite a useful and common optimization together with this.
Yep. I think everyone's quite happy with that.
Next slide.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't really talked to my co-editor on this, but I think that's probably the easiest way is add everything we want to add, and then the final pass take stuff. Well, I mean, we can do it in, sort of in parallel, but then it would be slightly easier to compare.
I mean, I think everything on this slide we talked about in Montreal, and none of it's controversial. So
I had one thing that I wanted to raise, which was removing the ability to rename inbox to something else and have the magic inbox rename happen.
you mean you rename inbox to something else and have it create a new inbox? Is
Yeah.
the way it works now.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's some other magic there too.
If your server allows sub-mailboxes of inbox, it has to move them under the new renamed inbox, or the other way. There is a special case.
Yeah,
basically.
there's lots of weird stuff happens with that particular case.
So what are you suggesting that we do?
Suggesting that rename inbox is not allowed, that you instead create a new mailbox and move the messages.
I'm okay with that, but I don't know if all the implementers are. Ned, Chris, Stefan, what do you think? Forbid renaming inbox. What do you think?
I'd have to ask Timo because I don't have a preference there.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Ask Timo Sirainen. Yeah, I agree. I think we need probably more feedback from existing implementations. My initial reaction is I'm happy to say should not allow, but I think I'm not entirely sure we can make it a must not.
Yeah. Fair.
Chris says need to ask the client.
Chris is asking, yeah. So yes, and I think the use case for this is poor man's, well, not actually poor man. It's a convenient way on the client to archive the whole mailbox.
Yeah.
You take the snapshot, current snapshot, and move it to another place. So
Right, and so the part of the question is, A, do clients actually use that? And B, do we want to say we're going to make it a really complicated crap for the server so that the client has an easy way to archive the inbox? I don't know, but
Well, that's what we have now.
it is what we have now, so maybe the default is we just have to keep it the way it is, and oh well.
yeah, I think one of the goals is try to keep it easier on the client side. I mean, we already have complexity in the service. Most of the servers already do this, so.
Yeah. All right.
So can we should discuss.
Yep. All right.
So I keep sort of slightly modifying this as we go. I think this is probably, hopefully, the last time we discuss things that we can possibly add, like fold into the document. So move is actually the new thing, as in it wasn't on my list initially, but I think this is quite common and quite convenient to clients. I would like to hear what people think about this.
Well, how widely implemented is the extension?
Fairly. Exchange had a buggy implementation of it for a while. I believe they've fixed it now. But they thought they didn't need to, the untagged response they thought was don't put any tag on it at all rather than put a star space.
Right. And if if we think it's a widely enough, one of the points of this was to take the widely implemented extensions and put them in. If we think it's widely enough implemented, we should put it in.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see replaced in there as well, but that's brand new.
Brand replaces really.
Yes. You know, I'm not, for this case, I'm not worried about the client implementations. The clients can use it or not as they please. It's a question of whether the servers have to implement it, and if they're implementing it anyway, we should put it in.
Yeah.
Right. Next is search res. To remind people, it's a way of searching for messages and then
Through search results. Yeah.
using the search results in other commands. You can do sub-search by including it in another more complicated search. You can fetch or copy, move, delete, whatever. I'm sort of two minds about this. I thought it was fairly useful because I'm one of the co-authors. And then there are specific cases where you sort of want to do automation type thing. In interactive clients, it's probably less useful, but I would like to hear what people think about this.
Chris Newman says the server has not implemented move. Prefer to leave it out.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
search res is not very widely implemented either. So, well, why don't we just ask about these on the list and try to collect more information?
I think binary is important.
Why status deleted? Why is that important?
The use case is try to find out how much quota you can free by deleting the mailbox. Or sometimes you want to know how many undeleted messages there are.
I mean, if you don't give the sizes of the message, it doesn't tell you how much quota you're going to release. So I don't see that that's important.
This is something we're about to add to our server, is the number of messages that are not deleted in the mailbox, because we've got some issues with counts because we ignore deleted stuff via JMap. So we will have an accurate number that we could quickly return for this. But
what does the client do with that information? What will the client do differently if you say there are three deleted messages or there are 10 deleted messages? What will the client do with that information?
yeah,
Okay, so it might be more useful actually the size of deleted messages potentially, but again, because this had direct application, if somebody running close to their quota, then they know how much they can free.
But then you need sizes.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be a similar deleted size type thing. Yes.
So the Apple client, I think, does a search for deleted messages very frequently on mailboxes from looking at telemetry. That's quite a common query, is to list the deleted messages.
I mean, I guess if you can fetch the size of all the deleted messages, that might be more useful. But But Pete says, can't you do that with the search? But that's why I'm saying I think status deleted, I question how useful.
Yeah, the point of status is you don't need to open mailbox. You get it in one command. It's quick. Well, yes.
Neil Jenkins. It doesn't seem there's lots of use cases with this, and if you shove everything into IMAP for Web2, it's less likely people will actually implement it. Just a thought.
Bron, I think looking at this, it's not something that already exists as an IMAP extension, and one of our goals for IMAP 4 Rev 2 mostly is to pull in stuff that's already been proven out in the field. Might be worth proposing this as a separate extension that can be used on top of.
Right. Okay, so let's ask all of this. I think with binary, last time we discussed is, I think Chris Newman suggested that we add the fetch size of binary, but not necessarily append size of it. But again, this is something you can double check on the mailing list.
All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the list of past changes and so on and so on. All right. So it sounds like just about everything will be taken to the mailing list for further discussion.
Yeah, but it looks like most of these probably are not going to be reflected in the document anyway. So yeah, I think actually it looks like the end is very near now.
Yeah.
So the end is very near now.
Yes.
Neil, again, what did we discuss the object ID one? That one's interesting. Just it's not widely implemented because obviously it's just been pushed out. But it does let clients be way more efficient. You know, in the case of many cases.
Well, I think we didn't discuss it.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it might be quite interesting, but it's fairly new as well, and some servers didn't do it. So I think we'll need to do a survey of servers, and if people don't do it now, how willing they will be to, if this is a part of the IMAP for F2.
All right. I will take an action to email the various IMAP related mailing lists that still exist out there, the IMAP protocol list. And yeah, I'll send an overall message to everywhere saying, here's what we're discussing, and then yeah, come to extra if you want to discuss the individual items. Cool. My last question to the authors is, what kind of timeline are you looking at for here? What milestones should we create for this?
I don't know. What do you think about saying, yeah, I was going to say March. So yeah, put in a date of March for publication requests.
Cool. Thank you. All right, back to snippet/preview. The new draft was posted the other day. Has anyone had a chance to read through it yet? Sorry, I haven't either. The one question I had was whether 200 characters is enough, whether we should say that the server can do up to 255, which will align it with JMAP and is a power of two-ish number rather than a random number.
I think we should get rid of these bizarre numbers and say it's 200 or 300, whatever. Get rid of geeky numbers. No more geeky numbers. That's my campaign. And Alexa says, no, 255 is great.
I mean, yeah, I do think there is a small value in using a power of 2 minus 1 in which if you're storing your records in fixed sizes, and you're allocating a size for the preview, you're probably going to want it to be a power of 2. But it's unlikely, I give you. The JMAP spec simply says it can't be more than that. It's not saying it has to be that long. It's kind of tell the server be reasonable, but it's just you need a limit to say we don't want you sending megabytes text here because the client's expecting to fetch a lot of these in one go, and it's just meant to be a short preview.
How long is a twit allowed to be?
It is
40 characters?
They doubled
280
it to 80
characters now.
Oh, they changed it.
Yeah.
Just go back to the old.
I think, yeah,
I think
100.
I think we shouldn't spend a lot of time arguing.
No, I would say I think we tried 120-ish, 128, whatever, and on quite a few common screen sizes with common preview layouts, it was a bit short. It looked like you chopped it off too early.
All right, haven't seen an author jumping up to comment on this one. Who are the authors? Preview. Open Exchange. Yeah. All right, so I guess we take that discussion to the list, arguing over numbers. Other than that, I think we're ready to go to working group last call on it. Everyone was happy with it at previous discussions, other than the size and the name. I think changing the name to preview is clear to everybody what it is. The idea that fuzzy or non-fuzzy and optional or not was all fine.
And just to make it clear, my whining about the geeky numbers thing was just a whine. Let's not waste our time arguing about the exact length too much.
Yeah. The main reason for concern is that if you were trying to align a server between IMAP and JMAP, it's good to have the same number in both. All right, Civ special use we've already discussed a little bit here. Everyone seems happy with the feedback, and we're going to go ahead and submit that for publication after today's meeting, unless anyone has
during the meeting
any objections. All right, you've been told. Go. It's got right up there, the shepherd right up first. 64-bit. We decided to put it away before. Do we say it's all too hard and leave it, or do we want to revive 64-bit? Aye.
Kurt says maybe we should embed IMAP v6 and go to 128-bit.
We could call it IMAP/3.
There is an RFC for that.
Hey.
Wow. Not that much.
Yep. I wonder what HTTP are going to do when they hit version 9 and they have to deal with the whole parsers that only look at the first character issue. 9 point something. All right. Hey. Thanks.
It's a good idea to at least align JMAP and IMAP in this case. JMAP is doing something with the JavaScript limits, right?
Neil's coming up.
This is Neil. Yeah, basically, wherever there's a number, it must be less than or equal to 2 to the 53, or greater than minus 2 to the 53, because that's the largest int that, or small, that you can fit into a double floating point without losing precision. So that's what we sent.
And we already decided to add that to the 64-bit as well to make it 63-bit.
So
Yeah.
63 is still quite a bit more than 53
Yeah,
bit.
that I mean.
Yeah, it's 53 is probably enough.
Yeah, but I said probably enough, and I'll go back to what I said in Montreal. Has anybody got a real situation where 32 bits have not been enough? I mean, really?
No, in our case.
So, why are we looking at adding complexity when nobody needs this?
This is Neil again. I mean, in JMAP, the server doesn't have to implement more than 32 bits because I don't think there's anywhere where it has to accept something that big. It's just that it must not return something more than 53 bits in that field because it may not be representable in clients, or it's not guaranteed to be.
All right. So this sounds like it's support for, we just ditched 64-bit.
Chris says we've encountered 63-bit requirements for status size and for quota usage, but not for individual messages.
Right, and status size is 64-bit in IMAP for Rev2, so I think that's fine.
Cool. All right. So I'm at 4 Rev2 provides for 63-bit values for those things, or 53-bit values, or whatever we want. You can say 63-bit values and they'll still be representable at 53 bits up until people have a very large mailbox anyway, right? Cool. All right, so 64-bit can stay dead. Milestones. So at the moment, we just have IMAP 4 Rev2, which is planning to be finished by Prague. I don't know of any other work coming that fits within our current charter. Does anyone else know of anything that's coming up?
I don't know of anything. Stefan, why don't you go first?
Revising the CIF main document for EAI.
You going to do it?
Yeah, I can take the lead on that, but I don't really like a whole working group waiting for me alone.
It's easy to wait. We can just not schedule meetings. And
Yeah, there you go. So what I got up to say was more generally the hibernation versus shutting down versus whatever is I've always been in favor of having an open working group to deal with email stuff. And if the IESG is good with that, I would rather just have it go dormant. There's no overhead in having a working group that isn't doing anything and doesn't need meeting time. So I'd rather leave it alone.
You had two questions and they have two different answers. Dormant working groups, I agree. As an area director, they don't take any of my time as long as I know they are dormant, as opposed to, I want them to do something and they don't, not getting anything done. As far as generic email working group, well, I tried before. That's the best I can get away with.
Right, but the thing is, as long as you're the responsible AD, nobody else is going to care, and you'll just let it hover. We don't know what's going to happen when you step down and another AD comes in and says, hey, what's this working group that isn't doing anything? But, I presume you'll brief the new AD and it ought to work. And we certainly have working groups in the IETF that have existed for 25 years. So they keep producing stuff. Well, and I hope we will keep producing stuff, just with gaps in between. That's all. At the point where we figure we're not going to produce stuff anymore, then we can shut down.
yeah, another thing that was on the maybe look at some point is quota bis, whether we go back and reassess quota.
Yeah, and Ned points out we've been having this discussion since Mail Xed.
So yeah, actually quota biz was the one I had a draft for, but if somebody else wants to pick it up, I'll give them the source, which differs from RFC a little bit.
All right. Putting an action to email Lucy about that as well.
Besides, if we stay dormant, then it keeps Braun and John Kahn with blue dots forever. So why not?
Yeah. Gotta have the blue dot.
Gives you free Wednesday lunch, for what it's worth.
It's not free. We have to sit through the session. All right. And at that point, we are on to other business. Is there anything else for us to deal with at this meeting?
Something entirely inappropriate for the chart of this working group, but a lot of relevant people are here. Can we do SMTP related working group?
That's not what I got up to say, but I think it would be a perfectly good thing to do with this. We would have to recharter to do it, because I believe our charter says specifically we will not do that. But I would not mind rechartering to do that. I know that there's a certain curmudgeonly person with a beard a little longer than mine who would probably howl Clemson would like to do it, but is quite afraid that the loonies will come out of the bin and take over. I'm willing to give it a try if John is, or if John is willing to turn it over. Should we recharter or just start another working group, says Kurt. I think we already have the structure here. I think rechartering this one would be the way to go. And the question, so then, is we were talking about RFC 5321, RFC 5322, and then perhaps the MIME specs. Yeah. And the real anomaly are 5321 and 5322, because 821 and 822 are internet standard level, and they are obsolete, and they're obsoleted by something that's proposed standard. So that's the anomaly. We can draft standard doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, right, because 2321 and 2322 were proposed standards. So their draft standard doesn't exist anymore. We can't elevate it to internet standard because of edits that need to be done. So yeah, I think we should attack those. MIME we can just fluff on because there is no internet standard version of MIME yet. So while we would like to take MIME to internet standard, we don't have to.
With MIME is actually, there are several documents that really needs ABNF updating, like folding, I would really like to fold all the errata hand, but.
So is this something that we should probably just take to the list and see if the group wants to continue sort of as the same core group and change the workspace and recharter, or not?
We can certainly ask the working group if it would rather recharter or spin off another working group, but I mean, people can come and go. And the people who don't want to work on it don't have to work on it. And people who didn't want to work on this crap but do want to work on that will show up.
Yeah.
So the main thing is I think we need to loop in John Clemson and discuss that with him. But Pete, you grumbled from the back but didn't really say anything. Why don't you come up to the mic and chat?
Just before then, Neil, quickly, is the goal here just to kind of fold in errata and get a nicer thing, or is it to actually add new stuff or revise things?
Well, it's the former, but there are known issues that need to be dealt with, and there are known people who have their own pet issues that they think will need to be dealt with, and that's the problem.
The Jabber line. Ned has been commenting in Jabber here that he thinks rechartering seems like less work, but keep the charter tight, tolerate zero-step creep.
Yeah, the problem, just a little background before Pete comes up, just a little background for the people that weren't here at the time. We've tried a couple of times to do this, and one of them was an experiment that we said, we are going to write a contract with the IESG in advance that says, this is going to be tight work, it's going to get done and don't make us update things that we don't want to update. Like, don't make us conform to current standards of how we do this stuff. Let us just put in what we need and get this at internet standard. And the IASG couldn't agree to that, and so we wound up collapsing.
If you buy me enough beers, I'll tell you my area director's version of this, because I was new AD and the working group was chartered just because, well, I was part of the discussion, but it just chartered. Maybe I chartered it, but yeah, there was very interesting discussions about, I don't think it was just ISG's fault. Let's put it this way.
No, I'm not. I think it was on both sides. I did not mean to blame the IASG.
This is Pete. 5322 is simple errata. It does not have any of the issues of it's going to upset the IASG to advance it. It's a different sort of thing. The only reason that I grumbled in the back is there is no longer serious difference in overhead between rechartering and making a new working group. And the only advantage to making a new working group is it's a separate mailing list. And therefore, if some people want to participate on one and not the other, they can do that. And likely, I'm going to subscribe to both because all I have to do is subscribe to it with my IMAP client on the IETF IMAP server, and I can read them or not read them as I see fit. So, you know, for what it's worth.
So where are we on this? What do we want to do? Well, I think we should propose on the mailing list that we do this either in this working group or in another chartered working group and see what people say. What do you think? How long will it take to put the final bow on everything? Kurt asks. Yeah, I mean, I think in theory, we could turn this. Right. In theory, we could turn this around in a month or two. That's if we can. Well, you know, I'm just talking about the work that the working group would have to do, but that's if we can really keep out the extraneous stuff. So, and that's assuming that we hit it at a time when Clemson has time to spend on it, or is willing to turn it over to somebody who does. So, yeah. Anyway, I think we should just bring it to the list and see what people think, and make sure that Clemson's copied. What I got up for was a bit of a digression on stuff. So we want to think about it in any other business. I wanted to talk about what Bron said at the plenary last night, because I think it's worth a few words. He brought up what happened in Montreal with the people who came with the client ID stuff. And I know I particularly was aggressive about telling them I thought it was a bad idea for the following reasons, and we've been through this before, and they kept pushing back, and I kept pushing back, and I don't remember whether other people pushed back also, but yes, they definitely left with the impression that we were telling them to go the fuck away, and I certainly was not intending to tell them that, and I don't know that other people were either, but that's the feeling I'm sure they got. Do we want to discuss that further here, or is that?
It seems to be a discussion that's happening throughout the IETF at the moment.
Right.
Not just us. And I think in our case, they came in very strongly believing that their spec was perfect and that any questions about it were basically us being obnoxious. So I don't know that, given how much pushback there was even at the idea of renaming it from ID to something else.
But, okay, yes, and so I agree with what you said. The question nevertheless, the question remains, were we too abrasive about it? Were we being dicks? I don't know.
John Levine, as I said yesterday, I happen to know that guy really well, fairly well, because he's one of these little cottage email providers that's been around forever.
Yep.
You know, and I think it was mostly unfortunate. I think he kind of didn't understand how limited his understanding was, and I think this sort of goes back. I mean, you know, I wish there were like an orientation. You know, sort of like before you get into the pool, you have to take a shower.
Yeah.
You know, it would be nice if there was some way you could say, no, really, this is, you know, this is how things work, and it's kind of mandatory, and if we don't happen, and if it's not the way you're used to working, it's not because we hate you, it's just because it's not what we do.
Yeah. I felt like when I came into the IETF, my expectations aligned to the experience I got. Clearly his didn't. Yeah.
Frankly, you're really well informed, which helps a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always use Alexei as an example of somebody who came into the IETF the right way. paying attention, listening, contributing a little bit here and there. And then by the time he was a major contributor, everybody knew him and accepted him and respected him. Not everybody behaves that way. But Ned says I had a bunch of offline discussion with the client ID people. It was not productive. Maybe they were talking past me and I didn't catch it, but I was definitely talking past them.
Yeah.
And somebody pointed out, it might have been John, that last night, that just because you are passionate about your idea and you speak well about it doesn't mean it isn't a bad idea.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I just want to make sure that we at least don't think that we were being excessive about how we pushed back at them. I don't think I was, but I have my own perspective only.
Yeah, looking back at my experience of it, because I was talking to them via email before they came to the meeting, maybe I didn't make it clear enough that what they needed to present was a technical argument, not a sales pitch, because they came in with a sales pitch, and I felt quite bad for them that they came in with the wrong expectations, and maybe I could have done a better job of setting their expectations before they arrived.
This is Pete with no hats on whatsoever, I promise. But might I point out that if you want people to be prepared to come here, it would do all of us who are senior in the community well if we would volunteer to be guides or mentors or whatever we're calling them lately, and step up and take on helping someone a few weeks ahead of time instead of just on the Sunday of the meeting, so that we can get them up to speed.
And this is Barry. That assumes that they are willing to be GID. And it's not clear that these people were. So.
Yeah, I think I was probably the person who encouraged them initially. And I think I believe I was trying to convey that, it shouldn't be marketing, sales pitch. It's not a rubber stamping exercise. I think I tried to warn them about expectations.
Yeah.
The feeling I got that, I felt that we were pretty much united in our opinion about it. We just, some of us were stronger and others less strong about it. We probably could have salvaged something if they were willing to negotiate. But I felt it required quite a bit of extra work on everybody's part.
Yeah, the other thing that I raised last night was the difference between a tourist and a newbie, that a newbie comes in expecting to do work as well as to receive what they want from it, whereas a tourist is coming to get their thing done and then leave, and doesn't have any long-term involvement plans. Won't be around to support it once it reaches standard necessarily.
I guess the other thing that comes to mind about other businesses is whether we should chat about BIMI at all. Given that we have time. No? Well, never mind. Yeah. The status is that we're trying to figure out whether we want to encourage them to have a BOF in Prague.
Oh, yeah. BIMI is a design that lets domains publish logos, basically, so that you can, so that mail systems can tag. Yeah. Yeah. I've been talking to people at Ballamail about it, and I suggested that since it has limited technical content, it might make more sense to document what they have and send it to the independent stream.
And the only reason that what I was telling Alexei, my opinion, is the only reason I don't want to do that is I think there's some actively bad things, some actively damaging things about it that I would rather we discuss in the IETF. Right, that's what this is for.
This is Neil. I haven't seen this since about a year and a half ago, whenever I was at a morgue in San Francisco. Yeah, so I'll have to see what's changed. We were not particularly happy with it at the time. I was like, cool.
Yeah, but we came around to accepting that the idea of something like this to encourage adoption of authenticated email had some value as a carrot, but whether this is the right thing.
Right, that they went from promoting this as a security measure to promoting it as a way to get more adoption of DKIM and DMARC by giving an encouragement to do it. And given that if that were the only emphasis there, if they were only selling it as a, we'll get your logo in front of people if you implement DKIM, I wouldn't be worried. I'm worried because there's still the undercurrent of this being a security solution, and I'm afraid that that sets bad expectations and opens us up to attacks.
I guess this sounds like it's something that belongs to the DMARC working group rather than this working group, but DMARC hasn't met for a little while. Yeah. So I mean that does raise the sorry.
Generic comment I have, just with no hats. I think that things like various governments, like UK and US governments, mandating DMARC probably have bigger effect, and I think there is way more DMARC deployments because of this. So it feels like there is actually much more critical mass these days, so it doesn't need an extra push.
Well, government mandates work well for the folks that they can impose that upon, which is essentially their own people. It doesn't work in the commercial space, and that's where the BIMI group is trying to appeal to the financial self-interest. Yeah, exactly.
So the other question that comes out of this is we've got Extra, we've got JMAP, we've got DMARC, we had MTA, STS stuff happening in UTA. There's a lot of different groups working in email and with a very similar set of people going to them. Do we need to consolidate at all?
Not UTA stuff. UTA has enough of other. Well, yeah, UTA is going to work on TLS 1.3 recommendations, deprecating TLS 1.1 and other things. So they're more generic. There would be some potential email stuff there, but
yeah. The other thing that I raised before this meeting and was wondering about is should we try and schedule a combined session for these things rather than separate?
I think it would not be a bad thing to coordinate the sessions so that they were sharing a larger session or something, or consecutive or something like that. That would be fine. But yes, I agree that they should be separate working groups still.
Yeah, if we booked a 2-hour slot with an hour for each, that might be a good use of time and allow people to
two
stay
consecutive 1.5 hour slots with the break in between or something like that.
next time you request JMAP and extra and/or extra, do put this as a comment.
Yeah.
In the slot.
I did put it in already for this one, but we missed getting that. I think we're done. Thanks, everybody.
And thanks to the remoties who are in at slightly weird times in their time zones. Okay, Chris, Ned, Sean, go to sleep. Good night.